TF2 recently fixed a bunch of bugs, but the patch notes aren't always very understandable, so here is a quick video to go through some of the recent changes. When you hit enter, your cursor goes to the next line. Behind the scenes, the line break is represented by a special character called new line. The new line character was used by cheats to push all the past messages out of view, effectively clearing the chat box. The new line character is already blocked from being used when you use the chat box, but cheats directly send data to the server without using the chat box, getting around this filter. The chat box is like a middleman who does all of the filtering, so the TF2 developers never thought to make the server double check the middleman's work. The new changes basically also get the server to double check messages for characters they should filter and gets rid of them. Players who try to send new lines to the server will also get muted until they disconnect. In testing what did and didn't get fixed, I found this other way to break the chat box. I have reported it to Valve. SV cheats control whether cheat commands can be used. There's two types of cheat commands. Local cheat commands, which only relate to how you see the world, such as turning off the entire HUD so your sniper scope disappears. And server cheat commands, like giving yourself permanent Uber and crit streak and no-clip to fly through walls. Custom HUDs had an exploit that let you turn on SV cheats locally. You couldn't go into Valve Casual and turn on permanent crits for yourself, but you could go into Valve servers and use wireframes. This has now been fixed. If you change class or loadout in a spawn room, instead of dying, you get instantly respawned. If you pressed yourself against the enemy's spawn room and changed loadout or class, you would get instantly respawned back at yours. This fix checks to see if you're touching a spawn room that belongs to your team before respawning you, so you can't respawn using the opposing spawn anymore. Sniper moves at 300 speed. When you charge the Huntsman, your speed dips to 160, but if you use a loadout preset bind, you'll keep charging your bow and stay at 300 speed. This fix forces you to lower the arrow when you respawn, so you have to charge it again, which correctly slows you down. When you play Engineer, you don't need to use the PDA to build a sentry. You can instead use the console command build 2-0. This will immediately bring up your sentry for placement. Similarly, the Spy Sapper is technically a building. When you use the console command build 3-0, you bring up a sapper for placement. The Wheatley reskin would trigger a voice line whenever that console command was used, which lets you sit there and spam voice lines.
Yes! Woo! Oh, woo! Done!
This has now been fixed. I honestly thought this was intentional, but apparently not. The dispenser used to be able to heal through glass, and now it won't. Whenever you disguise as Spy, it would summon an invisible box that would block bullets. The fix turns the box spawned by disguises that blocked bullets into non-solid objects, so they stop interfering. The Halloween characters used to be affected by your interpolation settings. If you used interp 0 or other modified network settings, the skeletons will look choppy. The fix improves the skeleton animations. I personally use CL interp 0 with interp ratio 1, which isn't completely fixed yet. If you disguise as a class with a shotgun, but the other team didn't have someone playing those classes, the disguise weapon would break. This has been fixed. The crossbow would sometimes miss if you were too close to your teammate. The patch has fixed short-range crossbows. Back in June 22nd, 2021, they added a feature to block players from changing their names while connected to casual. Apparently there was an exploit that got around this, so name changing is properly blocked now. In MVM, some of the class icons that would appear at the top would be super blurry when you used a lower texture detail setting. This has now been fixed. When you trigger the dead ringer, the match status at the top used to not pretend you were dead, now it does. If you decloak early, the match status updates accordingly, but interestingly, the match status seems to follow your speed boost rather than the cloak. So if people were timing how long your cloak was, it can still technically give you away. If you're programming tf2, how would you know ahead of time what to put in the kill cam for the killer's name? You can't. So instead, they put placeholder text that tells tf2 to dynamically replace it with something more appropriate. In certain circumstances, it wouldn't work, so you just see the placeholder text. This patch fixes this issue. Previously, when you got kicked or banned from a server, it would just say client disconnect. This was fine for Valve Casual, but community servers wouldn't be able to include information about what you were banned or kicked for. For example, community servers might kick you for having a low Steam level. You would just see client disconnect, rather than a more helpful message. This has now been fixed. The Manco catalog has a dropdown to filter what items to show. There used to be an option for headgear, which is now gone. This command allows you to set a limit for how much time a particular player can occupy the server. Many exploits to crash tf2 servers in the past revolved around one player sending a ton of data to the server, which eventually crashes the server because there's too much data to handle. This command protects the server by putting a limit on how much data someone can send the server and kicks people who send way too much data. This is a command that basically asks the server for a record of internet activity, so server operators can investigate anything strange. Transparent models in tf2 have had issues rendering behind other objects. This has now been fixed. This change basically improves hit registration on the soldier's whip, so hitting your teammates is more reliable. When you try to hit someone, the game first checks to see if you've hit the bounding box. If you did, only then will it check which hitbox you've hit. This is most problematic on Soldier, who can stick out far beyond his bounding box in certain cases. This has now been fixed. In menus, models that jiggle around using jiggle bones were broken. This is now fixed. Because of some oversights in coding, the Iron Bomber had a hitbox size larger than any other pipes. This has been corrected. The shove has been changed to credit the scout player instead. In order for your computer to stay in sync with everyone else, the server has to send you updates on what's happening with different objects in the game. Previously, the server was sending updates about objects that didn't matter to you at all. It was only relevant to the server. So this patch has trimmed out useless data being sent. It's like having less cars on a highway. Removing useless data makes room for other things. When you get further away from an object, you can't see its details, so game performance can be improved by reducing the texture quality on that object as you get further away from it. Pickmip is a command to control the texture quality of an object at its best. When tf2 first released in 2007, Pickmip was allowed to go up to -10. which rendered textures at the best quality possible. This was silently limited to -1 in 2010 when Valve released the Mac update. Allegedly, picmips higher than -1 would cause tf2 to crash on the Mac, which is why this was done. This seems to be true because within the leaked source code, the material system had a comment stating this: Mac users are currently running out of memory, which crashes the game. For now, we limit texture quality to high while we come up with a real solution. As always, Valve is just 2 steps ahead of everyone else. In 2010, they already knew that Macs would transition to Apple Silicon in 2020, which won't be able to run TF2. So they simply wait until this happens, then let picmip go back to -10. Absolute masterminds.
Hi, my name is Gabe Newell, and
Code scary.